Hello, I'm Ciarán Lynch and welcome to Teagasc, the Teagasc Sheep podcast. Each episode, we bring less insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. With the mating season finished up on many farms, we catch up to discuss ram management during the post-mating period with Michael Gottstein, Head of Sheep in Teagasc. Michael outlines some of the problems encountered with rams fighting and he offers us tips on how to reduce this risk. We move on to talk about the importance of addressing ram health issues and culling at this stage of the season. We finish up discussing the importance of putting condition back on rams during the post-mating period, particularly ram lambs, and what supplementation may be required to achieve this. We start off, however, discussing how rams are a significant investment for any flock, with Michael putting this into perspective on a cost per lamb basis and outlining some of the issues we see around ram longevity and high turnover rate we see in flocks.
Ram cost represents a sizable investment on sheep farms. The ram is the most expensive sheep we have on the farm, and by and large, we're saying, industry estimates are that about 1.6 to 3 years is the productive lifespan of a ram, and that's a good bit lower than what we'd expect from our ewes, and it represents a big cost to the system. So, Ciarán, what are the costs of a ram per lamb produced? If we take the figures from the national average figures in terms of output per ewe, and we take the figures from the department census, we see that the ewe to ram ratio is about 31 to 1. So for every 31 ewes in the flock, there's one ram. And when we take those figures and take an average productive lifespan of 2.5 years, ram costs on Irish farms with those figures will vary from about €2.90 or just under €3 per lamb produced up to almost €8 per lamb produced, and an average of just short of €5. That depends on what your ram cost is. So at a ram cost of €300, we're talking about €2.87 or just under €3 per lamb produced. And at a ram cost of €800, which is probably the upper end of what most commercial farmers are paying, we're talking about €7.65 or just under €8. So we can see, they're really big costs in terms of our production costs is the ram.
So look, obviously the more ewes that ram mates, the cost gets diluted. The more lambs you produce, the cost gets diluted. But it's a significant cost every year going in. And given that high turnover rate you alluded to at the beginning, there's clearly an issue with ram longevity in Irish flocks. And I suppose, Mike, if we take the figure like 30 to 1, it's maybe not the amount of work that's in front of them. So is it management leading up to mating, post mating? Essentially, where does it go wrong in terms of ram longevity?
There's different ways of reducing the cost. So, all those things you mentioned, increasing the number of ewes, increasing your lamb crop, but really the one we need to focus on, and the one which is pertinent to most sheep farmers at this point in time in the year, is ram longevity. It's keeping that ram there, having the ram available for culling at the end of a long productive life, as opposed to having the ram being culled early because he got injured or he's sick, or worse still, having the ram go off because he's died or been killed. So, like the big areas that we really need to try and focus on when it comes to our rams are, fighting is one, I suppose, big issue there. Rams will fight during the mating season and after it. So we need to make sure that they're used to each other before they're turned out, that we have them together for a long period of time, that they're quite active during the early onset period of the mating season. So having bigger numbers of ewes, that there's always numbers of ewes in heat rather than one ewe in heat, and the ram, 2 or 3 rams belting each other, trying to get at her. And then look at, ideally, I suppose, if we have to, and we have a very aggressive ram, maybe fitting a kind of a blinker on him to prevent him from fighting. Big thing then, I suppose, when we're taking them up, which most farmers are doing at the moment, if they haven't already done so, is again, same story. We want to confine the rams together when we bring them in from mating, so that they're in a tight space, that they don't have room to be running at each other. So, a small pen, a few gates put together. Some people use a livestock trailer, put them into the livestock trailer for a couple of hours. Keep them in there really for a while and fast them, and then leave them out in the evening time close to dusk into fresh field of grass. At that stage they'll be hungry. Hopefully they'll spend more time eating and they're not as inclined to fight when it gets dark. Again, look at if we have some really aggressive rams, maybe feeding them with the face shield again will reduce the thing. So I think that's the main area there around fighting.
Obviously, Michael, part of one of the issues we see with rams to come in, we see some injuries they may have picked up during that mating period from fighting and different knocks. Addressing them health issues in time when we're after taking them in, look, a lot will not like interfering with rams when they're out during the joining period, but it's a good chance to maybe just to take a check again on the health status of that ram. What are the couple of key areas they can look for?
Absolutely, Ciarán. So there's this is really the important step now, is to do the health check. We're very good at doing health checks before rams go out, but really more important now when they come back in, because they're going to be, not that well looked after, I suppose. Not that people won't look after them, but very often rams, kind of become second-class citizens for the remainder of the year. Now people get busy doing other things, lambing and looking after lambs and things like that. So we should be checking them, the rams, every 24 hours anyway, like all livestock, to make sure that if there is one sick, that it can be identified and treated appropriately. The big things to check for when you're bringing them in is, look, like you said, there are signs of fighting, injuries and things like that have happened. Do they need treatment for those? Lameness, a lot of rams will be, lame after coming in. So, get on top of the lameness. They need to be treated so that they can walk unhindered and graze to recover their body condition. Stomach worms for ram lambs, absolutely required for ram lambs after a long active mating season. So ram lambs will have developed a certain amount of immunity prior to mating, but they will lose that acquired immunity because they'll be under pressure. If they're active, they won't be eating a lot and they'll be losing body condition. So they will have a stomach worm burden, and it's very important that we treat them. And we need to be treating them with an effective worm or something that works on your farm. So look, at very important there is, after you've treated them, if you're not sure, take a dung sample to make sure that it has worked. And if it hasn't worked, you need to go on with a different product. Liver fluke again. Look, this has been a very wet back end. I know we had a good summer, and in some places earlier on in the year we had kind of almost like drought, but it's been wet kind of since August. So liver fluke is an issue, and we're seeing it in sheep. And rams need to be treated for liver fluke. And look, at very important as well, Ciarán, is that we don't forget that clostridial vaccination. Some people are using a clostridial and pasteurella combination. Whichever one you're on for your farm, make sure that the rams get their vaccination as well. And usually the best time to do that is when you're doing the ewes prior to lambing. Put them on that 12-month system so that they're getting their vaccinations every 12 months.
Just, it's probably no harm to mention too, there is probably an argument for, in some of them cases, particularly maybe for older rams where there is injuries, or possibly ones are showing some signs of other diseases, to maybe select them for culling before the end of the year, as opposed to carrying them over with that group for a full year.
Absolutely, Ciarán. So we have these diseases that we call iceberg diseases, and these are things that are very difficult to quarantine for. A lot of them have long lead-in time. So sheep gets infected as a lamb or later on, but doesn't show symptoms maybe for a year or 2 years or 6 months. And some of those are things like CLA, caseous lymphangitis, Iones OPA, or Wheelbarrow's disease, or Yaxete, or Medivisna. Not a lot of that around, we don't think. But those are kind of diseases that basically you buy in with the sheep. When you buy in a ram, you mightn't see signs of that for a year or two, and basically really be vigilant for signs of ill thrift, lumps around the neck and the head region, which would be your CLA, signs of pneumonia that don't respond to your usual treatments. So that would be your signs of your OPA, maybe, and your Medivisna. And these are iceberg diseases. And if you suspect them, really, you should be quarantining that animal, take it away, segregate it from the rest of the flock, get your vet out, see, do you have it? And if you do have it, you'd be culling those animals straight away. The really important thing here is to get them out of the flock, away from the other sheep, so that if they are infective, that they're not infecting the other sheep. And that's an important one to check for, because on a lot of farms, rams are the only sheep that are going to be bought in.
I'm just thinking, like, we separate them, we get them settled, we do our health checks on them. In terms of building them rams up again, Michael, there is an argument out there for maybe trying to put back on a bit of condition at this stage of the season, particularly if they've been left outdoors, maybe on what could be okayish grass, but oftentimes it's not going to be as good as we'd like either. In terms of providing a supplement for them rams post-mating, what's your advice on that?
Yeah, definitely, Ciarán. Look, I think from now on, really, the power has gone out of the grass on sheep farms. Okay, so look, at these rams have been on a high plane of nutrition prior to mating. If they've been active, those rams will have lost somewhere between 15 and 20% of their body weight during an active mating 5 to 6 week mating period. So for rams, depending on obviously their body weight, that's somewhere between 10 and 25 kilograms of live weight that they could have lost, you know. And it's important that we try and regain, you know, some of that prior to the winter, because that improves the chance of these rams surviving. And, you know, especially, you know, if we have bought some rams this year, rams that were intensively fed. So a lot of the ram lambs and even some of the hoggets going for sales will have got a good bit of meal in the run up to the sale to have them shining and big and looking well. And, you know, they've now been on a kind of a 5-6 week very active grass-based diet, but with lots and lots of exercise. So they've lost a lot of weight, and we need to really get some of that weight back on them, get them into condition so that they can basically make it through the winter in good fettle, and that they'll be there in the spring then to regain. So what we're saying really, ram lambs still growing, need to have high levels of nutrition. And for most ram lambs, really what we're talking here is about a half kilo meal for a period of time, just to get them to build up, maybe 5 or 6 weeks of meal feeding. Not a lot of meal going in there, Ciarán, 25, 30 kilograms, you know.
Just in terms of the ration, Michael, that's used, it's a question often comes up, the most suitable type of ration for them rams?
Absolutely, and this is the important point. You cannot use yo nuts. Okay, so a lot of farmers might have you know, started feeding triplet yos or be shortly starting to feed triplet bearing yos, and they'll get in the first batch of yo nuts. Can't use that for the rams. That has, in a lot of cases, not got ammonium chloride in it. In a lot of cases, it will have a bit of CalMag. You know, so absolutely, you know, we need to get a lamb finishing or a ram nut, some sort of a ram hogget finisher nut that has ammonium chloride in there. Look, this is a modest investment for most people. We're talking about buying, you know, a few bags of meal here. So, you know, we don't really need to be looking for big quantities of this in bulk. We're only talking about feeding a small bit of meal with good grass to build them up. You know, and the other thing I suppose, look there, Ciarán, is if we don't have a lot of grass, you know, and rather than just putting the rams out in some paddock and saying, look, sure, they'll be fine there, there isn't a lot of grass, you're better off to bring them in and feed them inside. Have a pen and put them in, because these are the most valuable sheep on your farm. These are the sheep that you've paid, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700 euros for. They're expensive. You know, a lot of farmers will have 5, 6, 7, 8 of these lads, you know, so there's a big investment there. So if there isn't enough grass, if you wouldn't be happy with the ewes being out there, you know, if these rams are going to lose body condition, you have to either bring them in and feed them a bit of hay or silage, plus or minus meals, depending on the age of the rams and the condition they're in. If they're outdoors and you're going to keep them outdoors, then we need to bring hay or silage out to them if they don't have grass, sufficient grass to keep them going, and maybe a little bit of meal. And also look at if the rams are being outwintered with the type of weather we're having at the moment, a dry lie and a little bit of shelter will increase the animal comfort, the health of them, their performance, and also the welfare for them. Like, so having, you know, somewhere for them to lie that's relatively dry and sheltered under a good thick hedge or something like that, an area that is you know, has gravel or hardcore on it, would be important there. And really what we're trying to do here is basically prolong the life span of these rams, give them you know, a comfortable time for the winter now, so that they'll be there in the springtime and next summer and in the autumn when we need them again.
Michael, certainly timely information. Thanks very much for your time.
No bother. Thank you, Ciarán.
Okay, so we'll finish up at this point. Again, some useful information for this stage of the season. Couple of key things from it. Firstly, getting rams paired up again into groups without fighting, trying to minimise that risk. Addressing any health issues that are outstanding, particularly lameness. Dealing with ram lambs a little bit separately, treating for internal parasites is vital to get them built up again. And again, you know, providing that supplement at this stage of the year, it's a small investment relative to the cost of the ram, and the potential impact again, or positive impact it can have on improving that ram longevity. So a couple of key things just to focus on rams and not to maybe ignore them at this stage of the season. That's it for me for this episode. Again, from any updates on the sheep program, keep an eye on our Twitter page at Teagasc Sheep. I'm Ciarán Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in to all our episodes.